everyone for joining us. We will call the meeting to order. And Jim, you and I had already talked about attendance will be, you already know who's signed on, so we don't really all have to go around any type of room and say we're here. Correct?
Correct. And here I will post a spreadsheet in Google Drive for staff members to sign in, and members of the public who would be acknowledged as attending can email me.
Okay. So we do have a quorum, and I don't have anything to report.
May I present now, by the way? Is that, hopefully this doesn't mess everybody up. We're going to have me be the background screen for everybody.
Okay, proceed.
Okay, so hopefully everyone should, in addition to your pictures, you should be able to see the CORC agenda screen. Okay, Mr. Chair, if you want to continue.
Yeah, we see that. So we've done attendance. And next item is Chairman's report, which I have nothing to report. Anyone with a conflict of interest for anything we're seeing today? I'm not seeing anyone say we have any conflicts, so we don't. Lou, you did CORC report last month. Was it written?
It was written and was sent in at the board meeting on Wednesday night. Mr. Barberi reported he had received the CORC report, and a copy had been distributed to all the board members, and they proceeded on. So there were no issues.
Okay. Can you do a report for us on this meeting as well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Staff updates.
Good morning, everyone. This is Jim Kennard. Just a few things this morning. I want to talk about the meeting protocols. And, first of all, I'm really kind of delighted not to have to commute in every day. It gives me a lot of extra time to watch TV. I watched a documentary about drill operators, but it was very boring. But then I watched a steel construction one, and it was riveting. So it's been a varied experience for me. Okay.
Can somebody mute Jim's mic, please?
I can hear you laughing. Yes.
Let's mute your mic.
Okay. All right. So just to go over meeting protocols now, just remember that everything we do and say is being recorded, including the chat. Please keep your mics on mute unless you're speaking, or otherwise we'll be talking over one another. And remember that background noise is going to be transmitted to everyone. Remember that we are using the chat for this meeting. If you wish to speak, that's where you would put your name in the chat, and I will let Mr. Porter know that he's got a number of persons who wish to speak in the order.
Can I ask a question?
You may.
Rats. My volume went off.
We can hear you.
Never mind.
Okay. Next, remember that we're changing our voting protocol now. Mr. Porter is not going to call for positive votes. He's only going to call for negative votes. So he will assume that a motion is passed unless you object. So, and the way you object is by going to the chat and your name. I'll advise Mr. Porter, and he will call you. You will speak your name and your objection. Mr. Dolan is operating board docs like this morning. He will pull up anything that you wish to have pulled up, open up any document, and display it for everyone to see. Please keep your phone away from computer. We've learned that even when it's not operating, it can interfere with your Wi-Fi. And finally, I wanted to thank the CORC members for being willing to be trained where necessary and adopting the new virtual software that we're using. Hopefully we can continue the board's important business this way, and we have a successful meeting. Also wanted to thank our IT support, which has been excellent. And finally, you guys had to look through thousands of pages of documents for us, and we are grateful. The process of getting your comments in advance should make this meeting brief. And you can see the discussion points in our meeting documents, how thorough that the review was, and the answers are all there for everyone to see. So there was a lot of work happened between last Friday and today, and staff is grateful for your support. That's all I have for now, Mr. Porter.
Okay. Mr. Porter, if I may, my items that I wanted to bring up as part of the staff report. First and foremost, of course, everyone knows this pandemic challenge has made it challenging for the operations division as a whole to work, and but they have been doing an incredible job. Many of you have seen the stories about the feeding stations, making sure that everybody gets fed. But it's really important that everybody understands we are very focused. We are very concerned for the safety of our employees. So we are doing everything we can to limit the number of people that have to be out there and accessing the general public, doing what we can, but it's not a free-for-all. We are definitely keeping control. I wanted to give everybody a quick overview of what's been going on with facilities construction. It's more like a day in the life, if you will. As many of you know, our last day of operating out of North County Support Center, our regular business operations, was on March 20th. Prior to that, we had gone through a whole lot of effort to try to put together a plan how to operate the construction program and the entire department remotely. We are now working remotely. All staff are working remotely. We've had to make some changes, as you know, right here. We're on Google Hangouts. We've all become very accustomed with Google Hangouts because we have, as Mr. Barbieri mentioned, we're having meetings, a lot of meetings a day. In fact, I think there's probably so many check-ins, and we're over-communicating to a certain extent. But that's probably a good thing at this point, doing a lot of status updates. Our SPAs are, in fact, out in the field, watching over the construction projects. They are using PPE. They are required to use masks and gloves while they're out in the field, but they are overseeing all the construction work that continues on out there. Our office staff are diligently working on project controls. One of the interesting things is once we went into this remote work, a lot of our contractors started catching up on the paperwork and started putting in pay applications. So we are very busy processing all that, and that's worked out tremendously. I want to show my appreciation to the other departments that we've been working with very closely. Building Code Services, of course, for our inspections and our permit reviews. Diversity overseeing the program. Very big thanks to Construction Purchasing, because all the efforts that went into getting this today and the board meeting next week were all in thanks to the heads up work by Construction Purchasing. And of course, we work with Treasury regularly. Quick overview of the construction that we're doing. We've got all the facility renewals. These are projects that you're all familiar with. We have our CM contractors are working in all the areas that are available for them to work inside the schools. About 20 schools on those facility renewals right now. So we really ramped up and expedited the summer work. So they're already working on their summer work, and likely we're going to get even more done, through the end of July. In addition, we've got furniture replacements going on. Larry Clausen and Mark Zagavac have been working through. Northmore has been completed, and Forest.
All of a sudden, sound turned off for me.
Does everybody still have me audio?
Yes.
I do.
Audio and visual, yes.
Okay. Northmore, Forest Hill, Carver Middle, these are all completed. They're working on Citrus Cove and Woodlands now, about to get started. We've also got Pioneer Park, SD Spady, and Palm Beach Lakes High coming up. So there's quite a bit of moving parts on that, bringing furniture in, getting furniture out, and redistributing. We've got a lot of minor projects and security projects are still ongoing. And of course, you're very familiar with all of our large construction projects. The Verde Elementary and the adult ed are almost complete with construction, as well as the Odyssey renovations and new construction. So what that means is we're all starting to work on planning our moves for this summer. There's a lot of moves. getting the people out of the holding school into Verdi, atomizing to the holding school, adult ed, the new spot. And South Tech is responsible for their moves, but we're working with them on that. So we've got a lot of work going on right now. Everybody's quite busy. And I think someone had mentioned earlier, just because we don't drive to these places, apparently we're doing so much more work. We're working nonstop from 6:37 a.m. all the way through to 5, 6 o'clock at night. So, and again, as others had mentioned, I'd really like to thank the CORC members. This board meeting, we're reviewing $95 million worth of GMPs. So I know it was a lot of hard work on your behalf, and I really appreciate it. It's a really important step for our program. And that's it for me.
Mr. Chairman, may I say something?
Yes, please.
So I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank Wanda Paul and her staff, Dave. It's been amazing. The work they've been doing. I mean, the superintendent keeps me pretty much up to date, and I have weekly meetings with Wanda, and incredible. One thing I wanted to tell the CORC members is that, when we were trying to figure out how we were going to do these things, the superintendent said to me, "What do you think, Frank, about if the board wants to waive the CORC input on this coming meeting?" And I said, absolutely not. I said, it's critical that we have the CORC members weigh in on all these contracts that are coming forward. So I know it was a lot of work for all of you. So the board very much appreciates the added work that you had to get all this together and for you joining the meeting. It is critical for the board to hear your input and so that we know when we're voting on multi-million-dollar contracts that you've all looked at that and you agree that it's a wise decision for us to go forward with those projects. So that's all I have to say, but thank you very much for your work on behalf of the school board.
Okay, thank you. If anybody's got any questions on anything Dave talked about or Jim, I think up in the chat window, log something in so that we know you want to speak about something. And if nobody has any questions for them, then we'll keep moving on the meeting here. We are down to consent. And some of us have sent in our consent items that we wanted polled already to Dave and Jim. I know after all the questions and answers came back, it removed all of the questions that I had for anything I wanted to pull. So at this point, to make it easier, if anybody wants to pull some things from the consent agenda, the best way, as we've said before, is to go up into that little chat window, top right corner. You should have on your screen, I think it looks like a little text symbol, and write in which ones you'd like to pull. Take a couple minutes to do that, give you a chance. I guess if you can't do that, then unmute your mic and let us know which ones you want to pull so we can make some notes about discussing those. If it's easier too, we can kind of poll each person, each of the CORC members, to see if they wanted to pull anything. What's the preference on that? Should we do it that way? What do you think, Jim?
Well, Dave, you have no one who's offered up anything on the chat, and we did, as you know, field a dozen or so inquiries on the various consent agenda items. So it's a good chance there might not be any.
Okay. Rather than assuming that we have any, if anyone really does have some things they want pulled, go ahead and unmute your mic and let's hear from you so we can at least make a list of those. Let's take a couple minutes, and then after that, we're just going to close it to consent. Well, I would say that probably means that nobody has anything to pull. So that would mean all of the consent items have been accepted. Well, that's very much appreciated. I think we had a whole bunch to review, 1,500 pages. Probably the most we've had in 10 years. So nicely done, CORC members. All right, we will keep going down through the meeting. Dave just gave us an update in the in-progress work, and we had no follow-up. Dave, I think you want to talk about the FCA scope change under 5.01?
Yes, sir. Real quick, while I have you, I wanted to let everybody see a couple of pictures. While I don't have a status update, the monthly status update, we had a little bit of a slowdown during the course of the period, but I wanted everybody to see that the Jupiter High School Classroom Edition, the Modular Classroom Edition project, has already started the demolition. This is where the agricultural program was. A lot of so if you're all seeing this photo, this has all been cleared. It's all been wiped clean. There is a greenhouse up here and a couple of sheds that are going to get removed very shortly. This all happened within the last week. That's how diligent it was from getting an approval to getting this project moving. This, a reminder, is a critical component of the Addison Meisner construction project that will be going before the board next week. We needed to move the modulars off of the campus and move them up here. So we had to get this site ready to receive them, and they are moving very quickly on that. So got a few of those pictures, but that's where we stand on that. I'd like to present actually jointly with Miss Evans, Leanne and I would like to jointly present to you we'll call it the sales tax referendum update. So Leanne, would you care to start off? I'll just turn the pages for you.
I will. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm glad to see all your faces. And I appreciate all of you joining us virtually. So this presentation was originally created as an update to the board, and we plan to bring it to CORC and ISOC, which is the Sales Tax Oversight Committee, in March. Obviously, that was delayed, and so we're bringing it to you now. And you'll notice on the first page, it references CORC and ISOC. The Sales Tax Oversight Committee meeting is tomorrow morning, and they'll be getting this same presentation. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Dave. So this is something the ISOC is very familiar with. It's just an update on the sales tax program. So the receipts through March 31st were 434, almost 435 million, as opposed to our projection of 375 million. That's averaging 115, almost 116% of projections. And we've received 32% of our sales tax for the entire 10-year program so far. One of the things that we're watching is what's going to happen with sales tax revenues. And I know you are very interested in that. I'm going to get to that in just a minute with some forecasts. Our expenditures, and this is through February, I couldn't give you March data because we didn't close the month of March until Monday. So it wasn't quite ready. So there's usually a month lag here. And those expenditures were 233 million. Open purchase orders were just over 100 million. And that equates, if you do the math and take the total revenues received to date, less the expenditures and purchase orders, we have about $100 million in the bank right now that hasn't been used yet. Interest earnings are 7.7 million, and we do have a revolving line of credit. We have not drawn on it. So much like you would have a home equity line on your house and it's just available if you need it, this works the same way. We pay a very small fee, excuse me, of 0.1% to have that in place. And it's just there in case construction picks up or revenues slow down. Okay, go ahead and go to the next slide, please. Sorry, I have a frog in my throat this morning. So this is another report we usually give to ISOC that breaks down the expenditures. And this is through December because this report is prepared on a quarterly basis. But it breaks the expenditures down by category of the referendum. And at the bottom, it has the projects that were funded from other sources. So it's a little more detailed than what you have in the first slide. Okay, let's go to the next slide. And this is what we've had a couple of questions on. Sales tax projections. So I want to point out, first of all, the sales tax program included a reserve of $51 million. And there's almost that left. We've only used about 300,000 to date. There are 3.1 million pending requests for summer projects that are included in your agenda items that you're reviewing today. So the original forecast that we've been looking at from the very beginning was $1.34 billion. And we've been running at about 115% of that. If that continued through the rest of the 10-year window, we'd be getting 1.5 billion. That would be a total of an extra 203 million. And we were looking at that and watching it back in December to look at that way. And we also wanted to know what would it take to trigger the clause in the interlocal that would require us to shut the program down a year early. And that was going to require growth at 122%. So we didn't think that was likely, and we really don't think it's likely now. So as you know, the county has pretty much shut down, and there's not a lot of spending going on. Everyone's staying at home. So we've done two projections, and the one thing I can promise you is neither one of these will be the final one. I don't have any magic beyond what all the other economists have. Everyone is guessing right now. I hope to have some better information by the time we get to May. Sales tax revenues come in on a 2-month delay. So we're expecting to get sales tax numbers for the month of February tomorrow. So everyone's very excited to see what that's going to show, but there really wasn't a big impact in February. So I think February is going to track right on target. I don't think we're going to get any information to show us how extensive the impact is until we get to May, which would be for part of March. And then in June, that's the end of June, is when we'll see the data for April. So everyone is kind of watching to see what would happen. But in the meantime, we do what we do and we make some projections. So I have two projections. And again, these are made up. The first one is that we would continue at 90% of the original forecast until it expires. I don't believe that's going to happen. I just wanted to throw the number out there to see what it would look like. And we'd be short by $36 million, short of the original forecast. The second number I have there is continuing at 60% of the forecast for the remainder of calendar year 2020 and all of 2021. And then revert to the original forecast, not the 115%. Now, this is based on some data that I had seen, and it's looking at Orange County, which is going to be the most dramatically impacted in the state of Florida, and looked at the data from the Department of Revenue. And if you add in if you look at revenues from sales tax, 40% of the revenues in Orange County come from hotels and amusement parks. So I wanted to take that. I took 40% off and left us at 60% of original forecast. I do not believe we're going to be impacted that much. And I've been told the 60% probably should be done off the 115% we've been receiving, not the original forecast. But I was really looking for what I think is the worst case scenario. If that were to happen, we would be short by $35 million, and I point us back to that reserve. We have $51 million. There's $51 million still there. After the transactions today, assuming everything is approved, and it's approved by CORC has already approved them on consent, they'll go to ISOC, and then they go to the board for final approval. So if they're all approved, that's $3 million. That would drop us down to $47.8 million in reserves. And 35.5 of that may not show up. So we still have extra money in the reserve. So that analysis made me feel better. However, I don't know when the country is going to recover. I don't know when we're going to start being comfortable sitting in restaurants and going to bars and going to hotels and traveling. I've heard that there is a huge campaign coming from the state to try to encourage people, when they lift the restrictions, people can travel, to stay near home, to stay in Florida. They're going to encourage Floridians to go to Disney and Universal because it's close. You don't have to get on a plane. You can drive there. It's going to be safer. So if that's successful, we might see some attendance at those amusement parks, and they do definitely impact state revenues. So we'll see how that goes. But these are two projections. So at this point, I believe we're going to have enough money to fund all the projects at their original budgets. The reserves is going to be we're not going to have as much in reserves, but we do have to watch. I'm watching the economy just like all of you are, so I'll have a better idea the longer we go into it, and hopefully we recover quickly. This is certainly going to be a big hit to the economy. The quicker we recover, the better off we're going to be. So are there any more questions on the revenue side of the sales tax? Okay. don't hear anything. So we're going to get started on how the money's being spent. And I'm going to do a couple slides, then turn it back to Dave for him to go through the rest of it. But just as a reminder, this is the original icon for the penny at work. And it broke down how we were going to spend our half penny. And it includes the things that you're monitoring, the school repairs and some construction projects. It's also classroom technology, IT infrastructure, and vehicles. And the sales tax is set to expire December 2026. So let's go to the next slide.
Leanne?
Yes.
David Porter, I did have a question. I couldn't unmute my mic fast enough.
Okay.
We have enough money in the bank to take care of everything we're going to approve through the summer?
Yes, I believe so, as long as no other department is spending. And I don't think they are. I don't think we're issuing any more POs. It's only construction. So I believe there is enough money in the bank to cover the items that are on your agenda today.
Wouldn't we have to have that money in the bank and pretty much be guaranteed before we enter a contract?
That's why we have the line of credit. There is a statute that says you have to have all the money in the bank to cover any purchase orders that are issued. We have a line of credit that gives on a day's notice, I can get the cash. That line of credit is currently $80 million. That would cover the entire budget. We're about to increase that up to $120 million. We're not drawing on it, as I said before. That is just there in case there's a difference between what we budgeted and what we've received to date. So if for some reason the sales tax drops significantly, which we expect it will happen, but doesn't improve as fast as we think, and construction at the same time speeds up, then we might have to draw on that line of credit. It's available for us to do that, and that's why we have it in place.
Okay, thanks.
I saw another question come up on chat. I don't know, can someone read that to me? I can't see it on the screen right now.
Yes, it was from Michael. You mentioned DOR information. Are there state or local agencies providing tax revenue estimates? And if so, is the information targeted for counties? DOR or EDR is working on a projection. They'll be releasing it on April 25th, which is Saturday, which confuses me a bit. But they're going to be releasing that. I think we'll see it on Monday. That's lining up with when we'll also see the February numbers, and it's going to be based on what they have to date in February, and they're going to be making a projection. I'm very anxious to see what that looks like. I think we're all going to be very hesitant in making what we tend to call a fearless forecast until they see what happens with the March and the April data. So they are working on projections. The legislature is urging them to get projections to them as well. So we're monitoring that. We don't have them yet. I think we're also in the process of trying to get an economic forecast specifically for Palm Beach County. And we hope to have that in the next couple of weeks. So we're making our own projections and trying to gather data from every source that we can to get a better handle on it, because of course it has a dramatic impact on our budgets.
You have another inquiry, Mr. Porter. Shall I read it?
Yes, go ahead, Jim. Read that.
This is from CORC member Gaines. Does the statute require sales tax revenues and other facilities? Want to make sure it includes other non-tax sources.
The projection I talked about today is just sales tax. We're certainly looking at all the revenues. Mr. Burke and Heather Canuse, who's the budget director, she handles the operating budget and I handle the capital budget. We are certainly looking at that, and we're hoping to do a board workshop sometime in May. The tax revenues, property tax revenues, we'll be seeing that number. We usually get a draft on May 1st and a final on June 1st for next year. That is going to be based on property values as of January 1. So the property tax numbers should be in line with what we projected. So I'm not expecting a big number there for FY21. There certainly could be changes for 22 when we get into 22. And we're looking at every revenue stream, whether it's the operating budget is looking at statewide revenues. So we're trying to get projections on all of that. And right now, nobody's willing to jump out and make that big forecast. I think the first thing we'll see is supposed to come out on Saturday, and we will be including that in a presentation to the board in May.
Okay. Anything else on your presentation, or I guess keep going, Leanne?
Well, I can keep going. So, David, if you want to go to the next slide. Oh, I didn't.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, ISOC has met quarterly throughout the sales tax program, and they're overseeing it. Just as CORC is looking at the construction projects to make sure they're being done correctly, you're reviewing contracts. ISOC's job is to check things off the list and make sure we're doing everything on the list and monitor the revenues. And they've been doing that. To date, they've approved 53 proposed plan modifications. Most of those were shifting timing. So we moved a little bit of money forward in a project or moved a little bit back based on timing of when work needed to be done. We have used $336,000 of the sales tax reserve to fund some budget increases. So very nominal amount to date. And they have 3 proposed plan modifications or 8 proposed plan modifications that we'll be looking at tomorrow. That reflect the same project you're reviewing today. They're just looking at it a slightly different format, but the exact same projects. That would be about $3.1 million of sales tax reserves that would come in to fund those budget increases. So ISOC is doing its work, and I'd point out that David Porter is the chair of that committee as well. So he keeps us all on our toes for both committees and makes sure we're getting the record straight, and that CORC is seeing the information you need to see, and ISOC is seeing the information they need to see. So I'm going to talk a little bit about technology because they do get a portion of the money. And to date, they have purchased over 5,000 smart interactive flat panels. That is the very large screens that they use in the classrooms, really replacing overhead projectors. They're attached to computers and they're touch screens, so they're amazing. And if you haven't seen it, there's a video that was done about those that's online under Your Penny at Work. And if you'd like, we can certainly send a link to that out to you. And it shows how they're being used in the classroom. But those were rolled out in conjunction with another program that was funded out of the operating budget, that was the Trailblazers. And if any of you looked online about how the kids are learning at home, that distance learning, it's all being done because of that Google Classroom program and the Google Certified Teachers and that Trailblazers program. All that work together to make it so easy for us to turn on digital learning. And I say easy in that the technology was available. Not that it was easy for the teachers to do it, but we had a lot of teachers that were fully trained, and we've used the train the trainer model to get them up and running. So it was fantastic that we had those flat panels as part of this program. That was the incentive and part of the whole Google Classroom platform. They've also rolled out a little over 4,000 audio enhancement systems. That is the system with the speakers up in the roofs of the classrooms, and then the mic that the teacher wears to ensure that every child can hear no matter where they're sitting in the classroom. Document cameras and ceiling mounted projectors. We're still using projectors as well. So that's what's in the classroom. And then the IT infrastructure, that's the back-end infrastructure that makes everything work. Whether it's routers and switches and servers and the new phone system, wireless infrastructure, all of that's keeping the district running right now. So all that's working behind the scenes to make sure that, it's helping us do what we're doing today. It's all the wireless infrastructure to help us do our jobs. So it was critical that those things were updated. They're moving right along, and it's working very well. I think with that, Dave, did you want to take over with transportation?
Sure. And on behalf of transportation, they have also been beneficiaries of the referendum. We've been able to replace 338 buses so far, and actually that number might be a little bit more. I'm not 100% sure because these numbers might be a month or so old. In addition to that, support vehicles, our maintenance vehicles, the trucks that everybody drives around in. We've been fortunate enough to replace 46 of those vehicles, and 68 of the school police vehicles we were able to replace. In addition to those vehicles replaced, you may recall we've added a whole lot of new police officers to our staff, and we were able to, using security funds, we were able to purchase another 100 new vehicles to serve some of those officers. Okay, now I'm going to get into my area of expertise, I guess. It's going to start with a quick overview of the facility assessment. When we did the referendum, back in 2016, it was based on a facility condition assessment. And the assessment included items like the obvious direct costs for equipment and materials and installation. We focused on like-for-like replacement of equipment costs only. Didn't get into any of the other things. We had a 3% cost escalation built into the, but only for the first 5 years. And there was a rubric that was utilized to help prioritize the needs, the worst first program, which is basically identifying the schools that were worst, that needed the most work, and to prioritize those things that were the worst within the school. Our project status, the construction project status, both from sales tax and other sources. Again, this is from February, so we've got over 1,000 projects underway, which, again, you as CORC members know about all of these, new schools and modernizations, additions, remodelings, as well as the facility renewals. We've committed through contracts for $354 million worth of projects, and we've already spent $142 million. Now, Leanne might have more up-to-date numbers on this, but we've also had the success of our diversity participation. We've got a 57% usage of diverse designers and 31% of our contractors. So that's a great success so far. When we first started this program off, we really hit the ground running. You may recall we all started off and got a bunch of facility renewal projects underway in 2018 right away. In 2019, you all were familiar. We added a couple of additions, the South Tech at Odyssey project and the D.D. Eisenhower project. We also started the new construction at Adult Ed in Verde. We started off 2019 with 38 different projects going on, facility renewals within 18 schools. That was the first 10 and then the next 8. In addition, we ramped up our minor projects, doing about 78 projects, including roof replacement, modular relocations, and drainage. And we also, at the top of our list, like to say 1A is our security projects. We've really focused. We had 71 new projects added in 2019 for intercom, fencing, and like. In 2020, we continue this role. As a matter of fact, you'll notice the first list additions and remodelings. We've got a number of these projects that are already in design. These are ones that have gone through you already. South Intensive is working on in design and implementation this summer. Delray Full Service is under design. Jupiter Classroom mods were in design and actually construction now. Lamosa School of the Arts expansion to K-8, that's under design. The Citrus Cove core expansion is also started under design. We've added more security projects to our program this year, another 66 for the same. We also have slated to start this summer 10 large single point of entry projects at 10 schools. Really important program that we're pushing forward. In addition to the Adult Ed and Verde, which, as you are familiar, we are about to complete those constructions this summer. We are, with your approval and the board's approval next week, we are anticipating starting construction on both Addis and Meisner, the K-8 expansion on site, and the Washington Elementary modernization as well. We've got 35 facility renewal projects, 10 of which are new on this board meeting. And we've also increased our minor projects. That's kind of the hit of what we've been working on, most of which, again, you as CORC members have seen this. You've seen it on a monthly basis. You've seen it on the approvals. Getting to this point, we've had a number of challenges, and you've heard about this, and we've discussed these in some of our past meetings. We knew that we were going to have a cost escalation. That is certainly expected. We've experienced a lot of bidding opportunities, so contractor availability has been challenging. A lot of our subcontractors are booked into the future. We had some challenges on our original estimates for some of the FCAs, the assessments, which we're working through. And one of the other challenges we've touched on every once in a while is working on these buildings while they're occupied. It's great for us to work in the summer and get all the work done during spring break and Christmas break. But we really need to work during the school year in these schools. So we've been fortunate. In some cases, we've had teachers or classrooms that were available to work on while school was operating, but we still get limited. We're limited during the testing period. So these are some of the challenges we've experienced up until now. Other challenges, you've all probably heard about them besides our penny sales tax and the fact that other agencies in the county have money, the other half cent. So those are competition. We've got Broward County, Miami-Dade, Hillsborough, Miami-Dade College, and Jackson Health all have big programs with a lot of money, a lot of construction out there. There are several $1 billion out there for contractors. So it's made it a challenge to get participation. So these challenges, we knew about those challenges. Now we've got some new challenges that have started to crop up. Recently, our projects, as you've heard about this month, we've got a number of our projects have come in over budget. Some of the leading factors to that are the escalation is actually higher than we had anticipated, projected. We've had shortages in contractors and construction workers. Specifically, we've had shortages in the subcontractor skilled trades wanting to bid on projects. So these are big ones. And again, based on the pandemic, we've had recent challenges of the concern that Leanne talked about, the shortage of sales tax revenues. And on our construction side, we're still worried about what kind of material availability shortages we might be experiencing in the months ahead. So these are challenges, and they will continue in our program. These aren't things that we can immediately affect. So what can we do? Well, we need to mitigate. Our assessment was done 4 years ago, and with the economic factors we've been talking about, we've had to try to come up with a plan to prioritize the important work, that work which must be done now. Of course, we had the rubric in the beginning to identify the really critical work, but we've come up with a simplified matrix to explain it, and we call it cool, safe, dry, and bright. So cool, safe, dry, bright. That involves the cool is the air conditioning, safe is things like fire alarm.